Hi and welcome back. In this lesson we are going to see code sample which will take the theory we learned in the previous lesson into practice. Let's start by opening the code which is under section 3, Computrade.exception package. We have here three classes. Let's take a look on my custom exception class first. Okay, this is a very simple class. It has only two overloading constructors, a default constructor and a constructor with string parameter. They are calling the super constructor respectively. By the way, if this is not clear to you, I recommend to go back to the constructor lesson. The interesting thing here that makes this class an exception is the fact that it extends exception. This is Java way to create a checked exception. Okay, let's move on and open the My Custom Runtime exception. As the name implied, this is a runtime exception or unchecked exception. How it was created? By extending runtime exception class. Great, so we have created our own checked and unchecked exception. Now let's open the exception test class and see how we can use them. Okay, we have a main method which is calling to handle exception method. We can see we have a compilation error saying unhandle exception type my custom exception. Okay, why do we have this exception? The answer is that the handle exception method is declared with throw my custom exception. This is a checked exception. As was learned in the previous lesson, checked exception must be handled by the programmer, either by try and catch block or by throw declaration on the method. Otherwise, a compilation error would happen. Okay, let's solve it. We can see that Eclipse suggests two ways to solve the problem. Either to add a throw declaration to the method, or surround it with a try-catch block. If I will choose first option, a throw declaration of my custom exception will be added to the method declaration. This is one way of solving my compilation error. Let's try the second option. Okay, the code was wrapped with a try and catch block and the compilation error disappeared. Great, so we understand how we should handle the checked exception. Now, let's take a look on the handle exception method. We have an array with two elements, and I'm trying to assign a value to the third element, so an array index out of one exception is expected here. As can be seen in the code, the exception is catched and my custom exception is thrown using the throw keyword. Great, so we also understand where the throw and throws keyword can be used. What is the expected result of the method? The checked exception which we created is expected to be thrown. Before we run the program, I would like you to notice the finally block. As we said in the theoretical part, finally block of code always execute, even if an exception wasn't happen. In this case, an exception did happen, and I would expect to see that the code inside the finally block was executed. Let's run the program and see. Okay, first thing we can see that the finally block was executed. We also see the output from the method print stack trace. The stack trace mentions the exception that happened, in this case my custom exception. It prints the message that we gave and print the program stack which was executed in runtime by the JVM. Last thing I want to see is what happens if I'm throwing my custom runtime exception, which is unchecked exception instead of my checked exception. So the method is almost the same, but you probably notice that in this case we don't have a throw declaration on the method. Why is that? Because my custom runtime exception is a runtime exception, and I can give the JVM to handle it by itself. Another difference we can see that in the main method I'm calling this handle runtime exception method, which even though it's expected to throw an exception, the compiler doesn't generate a compilation error. The same as before, JVM knows how to handle unchecked exception. Let's run the program and see the result. Okay, here again we can see that finally block was executed by the JVM before throwing the exception. We can also see that the stack trace of the exception. The stack trace mentioned the exception that happened, in this case my custom runtime exception, print the message we gave, and also print the program stack, which was executed in runtime by the JVM. Okay, we saw many things in this sample code. We saw how we can create checked and unchecked exception. We saw the differences between them on compilation and runtime. We saw how we should use the throws and the throw keyword. And we also saw the try, catch, and finally block in action. Follow this lecture, there is a quiz, which wrap up these two very important exception lessons. Take your time and answer the quiz. It will help you to prepare yourself better to the interview. Good luck and see you in the next lecture.